So while we have some people on here, I want to ask everybody that doesn't have the name Trudy Hayes to answer this question, because I have to save Trudy's for a little bit later. But how are you guys seeing the balance between the buyers having an opportunity to get properties relative to the listing inventory? Not all at once.
The listing inventory is still tight. It's getting a little bit easier, but I think part of that is because the agents are getting a little more talented at how to structure their offers. But
Okay.
certainly our listing inventory is really not increasing that much.
Fantastic.
I also think in Florida, we're going to have some difficulty when it comes to our condo market because of recent events.
Yeah, that would definitely make a whole lot of sense there. That's a sad activity there with that collapse.
Yes, horrible. But unfortunately, the majority of our buildings, our condos, are in that 40-year range or close to it.
Wow. So, and are you seeing the condo market stall at this point, Colleen, or not yet?
Yeah, well, yes, because I've been, dealing with it with the agents. A lot of them that had condo buyers have now backed out and said they just want to wait and see. There's a lot of, anytime there's this kind of an event, and you don't see it where you are, but down here, it's 24/7 on the news. I mean, you cannot turn on any program without seeing it.
Yeah,
And, and they keep talking about the other condos that are in danger now. So, I mean, it's really going to throw, I don't think we're going to see as much immediately, but I think the fallout is coming. I worked with Julio and Fabia yesterday, and we did an addendum to our disclosure, just telling what the 40-year inspection is, because I think that's something we're going to need. I think it'll be coming out, on the MLS and that, but it always takes them 6 months to get around to anything.
Now, I assume that 40-year inspection is a big requirement there, or is there one like 20, 40, 60, or is it 40 like a big one?
It's 10-year inspections supposedly, and then there's the 40-year recertification of the building, and it is required by law that they do that, and then it's every 10 years after. But I think that's going to, it was sort of loosey-goosey. In other words, they had so many months to do this, and I think all that's going to change.
Gotcha. All right, so I don't know, for some reason my screen view here is a little bit different. I only see the people who are on camera. I don't see any of the call-ins or the people on mute. If you are, excuse me, if you don't have your camera on, if you want to put it on, it'll give us a better feel of the group. And I'm gonna nerd out a little bit in the beginning of the call, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about what's going on in the markets, and how we have to drive, not looking in the rearview mirror, which is what a lot of the statistics tell us. If that makes any sense. And one of my favorite quotes, if anybody's a hockey fan, is the one from Wayne Gretzky, and he had a lot of good quotes. But he said what made him excellent, what made him one of the best players, was that he didn't play where the puck was; he played where the puck was going. Okay, and everybody runs to the puck, and he was running to where he knew the puck was going to go. And I think that's a frame of reference that we need to keep conscious in our mind in terms of how are we going to adapt to this market. Now, I have not been, studying these like every week, but every once in a while I like to take a look at some statistics. And I would encourage everybody to understand their local markets, because as you're going to see, as I do a deep dive here, there are some trends that are across the board, but there are some micro trends in different markets. Because I think one of the famous things they say about real estate is all local. Like, you can't use the national statistics for your market, right? It's very specific. So I'm going to take an opportunity to share my screen here and do a deep dive. And if you don't know how to run some of these statistics, I would say that it's probably worth a little bit of a refresh on your own MLS. And I'm good on one or two of them to run these, but this is the Garden State MLS, which a lot of our offices use here. And I chose to look at data from 2 years ago and this year. Okay, and the reason I did that is because with that whole COVID shutdown where we had like a dark period, it's really going to exaggerate the change year over year, because there was really nothing going under contract in March and April, and that meant in May and June there were no closings, so our closing numbers were skewed awfully. But if we look at 2019, which was a more normalized year, and 2021, and we pull some of the statistics, and we look for some trends, I think it's going to give us an idea of where the market is going and where the puck is that we need to play. And I took some typical markets that we operate in. I did Montclair, I did West Orange and Essex, I did Parsippany and Randolph, and I did Linden, Union, and Westfield. And I want to just show you how these markets are going and what I'm looking at. So if I'm looking in Montclair, this is the active inventory. Okay, and right now we're at 109 units. We were down to 94 in December, and your typical is probably 150. So we've gained 15 units, so we're up about 16% from the December, or actually January is even a low of 89 and 84. So we're probably up more than 20% if we look at the inventory levels in Montclair. And we can look at how does that translate into the number of sales, which are also trending up from 33 to 68, which means that buyers are now being able to be a little bit more successful, because there's more inventory and thus there's more units to be closed. And a market like West Orange, which has significantly more inventory, looks like it had a low of about 157 and it's up to 206. That's pretty good. I think it's good for sellers and for buyers. I think we still have plenty of buyer demand, but we now have a shot at getting our buyer opportunities or buyer offers to be accepted. We go down to Parsippany. 2 years ago it was 219. Now it's 172. The prior month it was 220 to 141, 203 to 130. So we're getting to be a more normalized market. Okay, if we're working with sellers, we need to set the right expectation in terms of, instead of getting 12 offers, we might only get 2 or 3 or 4. Randolph, for some reason, Randolph has inventory which is significantly less than half versus 2 years ago. If we look at this, Linden is trending around half. Union is about 60% if you look at this, but these numbers are all trending upward in inventory, and the sales are also trending upward. So we went from 58, 53 now to 66 last month. Okay, and the sales are trended higher by 12 than the prior year. Now I wanted to, let's see, got my share here. All right, we have a fair amount of people on here. I want to turn to Trudy, who has been a rock star with our Zillow leads and buyer leads in general. And Trudy, are you doing probably 2/3 buyer, 2 buyers to every 1 seller? You about that range, or?
Yeah, I tend to work mainly with buyers, to be honest. I don't know, unless the buyer is looking to sell something. Um, it's just the opportunities that I get in. I don't seem to get any sellers. I just seem to pick up the buyer leads. So that's my sort of, well, expertise, or the thing that I like to focus on.
So, so I heard from Mr. Garver that you've had some success and you've seen a little bit of a shift. And I wanted you to maybe discuss a little bit about what you're doing differently, if anything, and what you're seeing in terms of, how, the buyers are able to get things accepted.
Yeah, sure. I mean, last year, it was sort of crazy. The buyers that I was dealing with, they seemed to be less picky, because obviously there was less inventory, and they knew that they had to move quickly. So they were waiving all sorts of contingencies. And they were also, when it got to inspections, they were doing less demand. Um, and they just wanted to close and get an offer accepted. And sellers are actually, they were delaying the listing, so they would come up as delayed showing. They'd start the showings on a Saturday, and we could more or less guarantee that there would be multiple offers by Monday, and they would be calling for best and final. And it would be anywhere from 10 to 30 offers, depending on the market. Yeah, but around Chester, Bridgewater, the areas around here, Bedminster, Bernardsville, that was happening. And it was across all price points. I mean, I've got one that will have gone at overlist. Obviously, I can't say what it was, but it was listed at 1.3. And things are going like 10% above what they're listed for. And that's how it was. Now, what I'm seeing is there's more houses coming on, and the buyers are still out there, but I've got some that are holding because they can see the shift in the market, and the competition for each house is a lot less than it was. So last week I presented 2 offers, and got both accepted. And another thing that I'm seeing that the sellers are doing currently, instead of doing delayed, actually this week they're doing delayed because of the holiday, they're actually accepting offers, but they're holding the offers for 4 or 5 days before they decide to go with it, because they are used to getting multiple offers in the first day or two. So I've got one that I put an offer in Bridgewater on Monday, and I still haven't heard whether I've been successful on that one, because they're holding in the anticipation of getting more offers. So I checked yesterday, and there was 2 new listings that were competitive to the one that I put the offer in on. And those 2 units were more updated than the one that I've got the offer in. So I shot an email to the listing agent just pointing out that basically she's holding to get more offers, and now she's got competition with these 2 listings that have just come up, because they're more updated and they're like 15,000 over where the offer currently is with the one that I'm dealing with. So it's definitely a shift in what buyers are expecting and what sellers are expecting. And I'm also getting ones that are currently under contract that are due to close next month. I'm getting calls from them because they can see what's happening in the market. There's more inventory. So I'm getting calls from them saying, do I think that they've overpaid for the property that they're now under contract with? So yeah, it's sort of like definitely a shift that I'm seeing.
So I don't know if, Trudy, if like we see prices are going to be going down for people overpaying, but I think right now, maybe we have a better shot at getting
Yeah,
offers accepted. And I do think that, it's not completely irrational to not put an offer in at or substantially over asking price, especially if the property is not priced accordingly.
yeah,
I mean, as I'm looking at some of the people here in Westfield and some of the other agents that I've kind of surveyed, they're now getting some offers that are coming in below asking price that, are still reasonable offers. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's what I'm seeing. But and that's gonna happen more as the inventory increases, and I think we're getting more inventory now because the sellers can actually see that there's a shift in the market. So I think the sellers are worried that that the prices are going to drop slightly, or that they're going to get less offers. So I'm seeing, literally in the last 2 weeks or so, that the sellers are now, you know, pressing the button to actually list the house because they think that the window is shortening to actually get the offers in and accepted. So that's why we're sort of like seeing more inventory, and there's less competition for each house. I mean, I can just look at the figures. I mean, last year I was throwing out maybe 5 offers every, I mean, sometimes it could be every week, and maybe I'd get 1 or 2 accepted. Now, the buyers that I've got are still there. So hopefully there's going to be an uptick in offers being submitted and accepted. But I think the pool is going to run out of, those ones that are desperate to get something currently. And it's going to settle a little bit. I mean, I've seen less. I think the buyers currently that are looking can see what's happening, and they're waiting for more inventory. So it's only the ones that are currently sat with me that I think I'm going to be shooting offers out and wanting to get them moved.
So I'm trying to interpret, like, why is this happening? And what I'm seeing is maybe people have other activities that they could do now, Trudy, where home buying was something that was safe to do in their home. But I've flown regularly down to Florida, to visit our office there. And the last 2 trips I've made there in the past 6 weeks, the airport was mobbed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, you could not, you had trouble walking from the terminal to go to pick up your bags. There was that many people. I've never, ever, ever seen it so crowded. The past 2 nights, I went out 7:30 to a local restaurant, which you never needed a reservation. I've been turned away at restaurants. You need I'm like, I need a reservation. This place used to be a ghost town. Are you kidding me?
Well, I
So
think people are getting their lives back together. So they're now focused on catching up with people that they've not seen for a while, visiting family and reconnecting.
But could,
So
I mean, maybe this could be, Trudy, a reason why, maybe we're overthinking it. Maybe people are just doing some other things and not just solo focused on real estate. Who thinks that might be, part of it?
I think that's part of it, but we are seeing a very heavy inflection of people moving in. We get a lot of inquiries from up north now, much more than we've seen, even last year.
And I think this is a healthy discussion, a healthy conversation, because I think even sellers, what was the biggest challenge with sellers before? Let's say a month ago or 2 months ago, before it started to slow just ever so slightly. Come on, what was the big challenge with sellers? Part of it was maybe they felt a little greedy, a little emboldened.
yeah,
But
it was actually getting them to accept something, and they were very rigid as well when it comes to home inspections and waiving of contingencies. And they could pick and choose, to be honest. I mean, not everybody's on a level playing field depending on what loan type they're after. I'm still struggling a little bit with the FHA clients that I have, but it's becoming easier. So where I was putting offers in and they were getting, 10 or 15 offers, I was up against 2 the other day. and we almost, we didn't get it, but it's turning more positive for that sort of lender.
Yeah, I think we're seeing also that things are staying on the market a little longer. House that would have been sold in 2 days has now been on the market almost 10 days. They overpriced it, of course, but before, overpriced homes were still selling in 2 days. So I think it's beginning to level out a little bit in that respect.
Yeah, I've seen some price reductions come as well. Whereas before, everybody was holding firm because they knew that they would eventually get a deal. So I think now sellers are aware that that there's more inventory coming up. So I think the sellers definitely are looking at they think they've got a shorter window to get something under contract, which is why I'm seeing more come up and more price reductions currently. And it's good for the buyers. I mean, I've been emailing my buyers, basically telling them that, I'm seeing a bit of a softening and that there's less competition, because a lot of my buyers were a little bit disheartened, I suppose, that, they were coming up against so many offers. So, I mean, I've got, some financial people, and they've got their eye on the market, and they're going to be back out again looking, because they can see that now they're going to get something. And they're actually more stuck on the price that they're looking at. Before, a year ago, I had people looking in the 800,000s, and because things were going so far over list, they realised that if they spent a little bit more money, they were actually getting a better deal than overpaying for something that a year before would have been, high 600s in the 700s, and now they're paying 800s for it. So I had one that was originally looking in the 800s, and we're sort of under contract with something that's going to close probably nearer the 1.3. But I mean, obviously he was able to go up that, but he felt he was getting a better deal overpaying on that price point rather than a lower price point.
So,
well, the good news is too, now sellers have more options if they're worried about finding their own house.
right. I don't know who said that, but you're reading my mind, because I think one of the other challenges with your sellers are, yeah, this is great, but now I got to go into the market and I got to be on the other end of this story, and it's a big challenge. So that's another headwind that we were facing that I think is now softening a little bit, whereas the sellers who then need to go into the market and buy, you have a better opportunity to get a property. Never mind like paying 20% over, they could get a property more reasonably. Who made the comment before about the sellers being troubled to buy?
Lorraine. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Lorraine. Great comment. Now, Trudy, where were the two homes that you just sold this week? What towns?
Well, under contract. So there's one Gladstone, and then there's going to be one Bridgewater. And the different price points. So one's in the 900s and one's in the 3s. So it's I'm seeing it sort of across the board. But the buyers are, whereas before we were just going into contract and they were happy to just plow along and get it under contract, get it closed. Now I'm seeing that buyers are definitely asking more questions, and like I had one message me the other day questioning the assessment to the list price, whereas last year they weren't doing that. They were just so happy to get an offer accepted. So yeah, and I can see that come home inspections, I mean, we're not waiving anything on those, and only the little one will have gone over list. The larger one we've got under list.
So I want to just, maybe validate some of the actions that are going on here and encourage everybody to understand where the market is and more importantly, where the market's going. So I'm going to share my screen again with you. Just get this up.
So Rob, while you're doing that, I just wanted to point out that in the last 2 weeks in Morris County, there were 53 price adjustments and 49 of them were down. Only a couple were raising their prices, but the bulk of them were lowering their prices. I think that we're starting to see, as Trudy's saying, that houses don't have to be purchased over asking. There is some room there to negotiate, and I think that sellers who may have overpriced their houses during the period of time where it was total mayhem in the market are finding their houses starting to sit a little more, and they're getting a little anxious.
Yeah, I've seen as well. I've had a few where now I don't know whether the mortgage companies are seeing the adjustment and less sort of like craziness, but there's been a few, not mine, but there's been a few that I've heard of that haven't appraised. And I mean, that's sort of like all over New Jersey. I mean, I was down in Chesterfield, New Jersey at the weekend, and the listing agent there said that just recently, not before, but just recently, the mortgage companies are not, when the appraisal comes in, they're coming below. So I don't know whether the mortgage companies are adjusting what they're, I don't know, appraising because they can see the, the softening a little bit.
So does everybody know how to run this report that I have on the screen? I'll show you if you don't, but I want to just look at these two towns, Trudy, for demonstration purposes. So I took 2020 out because it was wacky, especially with closings in April, May, and June, because we basically shut down for a couple of months, and then there was a surplus. So I compared this year to 2 years ago, if that makes sense to anybody. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying in December of 18 versus December of 20, we had about 80% more inventory, maybe 90% more, 80% more inventory. We remained at 80%, almost 100% more inventory. Now, the inventory that's active is 274 versus 172. It's starting to converge. Okay, the new listings, there's 70 that went on in June of 19. There's 91 that went on now. Okay, so that is tremendously positive. There were 60 sales in June of 19. There were 65 here. So 5 more sales, 21 more listings coming on is what's adding to the 149 to the 172 is a combination of the sales pace not accelerating as quickly and the listings coming onto the market. And if you listen to some of the economists, they're saying that what's happening is with the prices going up, you're creating some demand or some inventory by sellers saying, hey, if I was thinking of selling in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe now is the time. Anybody ever have a seller kind of say, hey, I've moved my horizon up because the market's so hot?
Yeah, I think another point to be made is that it's a good way to push the sellers forward now, to tell them that their best opportunity of getting highest dollar is now because the market is trending to level out.
And
So I think if we show them these things,
Well, I'm telling my buyers that that have been sat and waiting for what the market's doing. I'm just basically telling them that because I don't see some areas the prices you can now get something less than the list depending on the the activity on it. So I'm just telling them that now is a good time to be pushing the button because there is less activity on the houses that they've been sat looking at. And that seems to be working with the buyers. With the sellers, like you said, I think that they're all, well, a lot of them are now realizing that they better make hay while the sun's shining, because there's going to be sort of now's the best time, basically.
So Trudy, look at this. In PPAC Gladstone,
Yep.
the sale to original ask price and sale to list price is 89%. I've not seen that in forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it went down from 102 in May, 98 in April, 95 in March, and it was 102 in January. So, you know, there is a shift. I think what might have happened in PPAC Gladstone is a very thin market, not that much inventory.
Yeah, price points are all over as well. So you in PPAC Gladstone, you have properties that are listed, you know, the smaller ones, like the little colonials that are on Main Street. So originally, you know, before COVID, they were going in the high threes. They're now being listed in the fives. So that's the price point that's softened quite a bit. Some of the higher price points, they are moving. So yeah, it depends which price point you're looking at. But the one that I'm looking at is in the nines, and you know we will have got it under list, or touch wood. She's asking a lot of questions.
So maybe we need to, you know, appropriately get this out to, you know, our buyers, maybe some of the ones that were frustrated that, hey, you know, there's actually a few more houses that you could take a look at. To your point, Trudy, you don't need to, you know, have an offer in by Sunday on a house that just went on Sunday, right? Or went on Saturday. You have to have the offer in by highest and best on Monday. I mean, that is becoming less and less. You know, I know interest rates are still performing well. I don't know, are any of our lenders on the call? All right. I spoke to, you know, Bruce Oliver, and he had mentioned that, you know, the rates have trended down slightly from a high of about 2 months ago, from an eighth to a quarter lower, probably in the high twos, which is, you know, also boding well for our buyers if there's more inventory, maybe price stabilization, and, you know, potentially lower rates. And ironically, I think the language that the Fed used, where they're saying instead of like indefinitely we're keeping rates low, they're saying, hey, we're keeping an eye on it, okay, and when we need to raise the rates, we will. I think that actually is helping keep rates low, because it's showing that the Fed is keeping an eye on inflation, and that keeps the longer term interest rates low. And it's the converse that is frustrating for a lot of us lenders, when the Fed is cutting interest rates like they've done in the past, and you know the mortgage rates don't continue to drop that much, because the 30-year mortgage rate kind of trends on the 10-year bond, and the 10-year bond is looking at what the inflation outlook is, if that makes any sense. So the fact that the Fed is now paying more attention to interest rates is actually, you would think that that would cause people to panic and say interest rates are going up, but it stabilized them, at least in the short term. Any other questions on this data and how it's, you know, it's incredibly different by market? I mean, you know, here we have PPAC Gladstone was, you know, dropping quite substantially, and we have Montclair went down from 126 to 120 month over month. West Orange 106 to 105. Yes,
How do you make that chart, if you don't mind me asking?
I will show us after we go through this. And great question.
Can I just say something? I think too that buyers, you know, they're looking on Zillow, and they were looking even last year, and they see that the prices just went a little too crazy, and they're just not willing, some of them, to go up as high as sometimes the sellers have been asking. So they kind of waited.
You know,
and so now I guess it's a better, yeah.
I noticed something. Let's see. Zillow.
Rob, while you're doing that, I just saw a question come in about the FHA thing, the loans, because I do FHA and I've been successful with several FHAs this year. Bruce has helped me out with them, but some of the agents, listing agents, they don't really understand the difference between FHA and VA, because when you sign the addendum or get your sellers to do the addendum, it says about the appraisal that it has to appraise, and some agents think that they can't purchase an FHA property if it doesn't appraise, and that's not correct. They can make up the difference. With a VA, they can't. And the number of agents that I've presented FHAs on that believe that they're the same is quite, I don't know, quite shocking, really. So whenever I present an FHA, I always, inform them, basically saying, I know that you know, but, just so you know, the FHA, the client can bring in more money if it doesn't appraise. And that's especially if they're going over list, 15,000 or so over list.
Yep.
But
So-
VA have to appraise, so that's different.
So I noticed this. I noticed that when I went on to the home pages, right? And I think I talked to everybody about, hey, let's talk about, why you want to buy now. And it would show that the Zillow predicts that in zip code 07869 that home prices will increase by, 5.2% in the next 12 months. In the past 12 months, they're up by 10%. That's gone here. I don't see it. Did anybody else notice that? I've noticed that for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and I've also, when I've been looking at the properties as well, I don't use the Zestimate, but when I've rechecked certain houses that I've been monitoring over 6 months or something, ones that are on the market or aren't on the market, the Zestimate's actually gone down slightly from what it was previously.
And it's not giving, this one's not giving me a Zestimate either. Do you
No,
notice?
you have to sign up now. So if you go down to the bottom, it says something about Zestimate, and you have to click on a link to get the Zestimate, and then you get an email basically saying that you won't share it and all that sort of stuff. That's what happened to me yesterday when I was doing it. Tends to be right at the bottom of Zillow.
So this one here, just the front one here, price cut 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. This one does have a Zestimate, which is interesting.
Rob, I just have to say that Deer Run house, that's hanging off the edge of a cliff.
Okay.
That's a tough sale. It's has a really steep driveway.
So,
And
but they're no longer predicting what, they're no longer saying in the past 12 months, this is what happened, and we predict this in the next 12 months on the Zillow page. And I noticed if you go into different markets, like some other markets, and this one, this one had a Zestimate, didn't it?
Yeah, that one had the Zestimate at the top, I think.
Yeah, right there. There's a Zestimate. Let's see. Let's take a look at it. Zestimate 660. And if I go into different markets, like I was looking.
Let me have a look at. I'll tell you the one that I looked at yesterday, and I had to sign up to get the Zestimate.
See, down in Florida, where I was just doing some research here, it looks like the properties. Oh, there blows my example there, but so many of the properties the Zestimate is almost exactly what the property was listed for.
Type in 20 Brook Hollow Drive, Gladstone.
And then I have a question too, Rob.
Is it,
I
is it,
know,
is it road or drive?
It's the top one. There's only that one. Yeah.
I know that none of us have a crystal ball, but what do you think for next spring coming out for all the people that waited this year? I think we're going to still have a very strong spring market. Just my opinion. Does anyone agree with that?
I mean, I think that the market's going to trade well, Janine. I just don't know if it's going to trade at, you know, the like the 0.5% to 1.5% monthly increases that we've been seeing. I think that you know, maybe affordability comes in, maybe there's more balance, maybe buyers have a little bit more leverage when they're buying. But I do think that we're going to see robust trading because there's been a lot of identified demand to move around. So that's my opinion.
That one that doesn't have the Zestimate on, but if you page down and keep going down, it'll say, keep going right the way down, it'll say about getting the Zestimate. So still further down.
Right here?
Yes. So now what Zillow's doing is, I've seen this on quite a lot of them. They don't actually publish the Zestimate. They're making you submit and you'll get an email. And it'll click as to what they think the Zestimate is.
I guess they're probably just experimenting at different lead capture ways, right?
Yeah, probably. And it also says about sharing the information. So when you get the email, it'll tell you terms and conditions.
So
Rob, this started when Zillow began when they switched over to IDX feeds. They stopped. Some of the information is inadequate for their old Zestimate engine to pull it together and figure out what the pricing is. In the markets where they have representation or they have a brokerage now, they are using that as a lead capture though when you register.
Thank you for that. So there's a reason behind it, and I'm sure if that's a productive way, they might have you registering every time you want to see his estimate. So anyway, we're shifting all around, and that was Glenn, right?
Correct.
And Glenn, you had mentioned that you saw the market was still strong, but not as I mean, the magnitude of offers is slowed a bit.
Yes, I think the buyers that are coming are much more intentional about offers, and you have less of them for sure. I also think that I've seen it specifically in the last 3 weeks that this has been occurring, but it's been brewing for a while. When we started winning 50% of our offers, I started to wonder what was going on. That was around April. So this isn't just a 3-week event, but I do think that it's been brewing, and now we're here. And educate your sellers, because the last thing you want is one house to have them around the block and you not to.
Yep. That's a great point. So somebody asked about how do you pull this data? So I went over here to the analysis, and I went to area statistics, and I just did a by date comparison. And you can play around with like by bedroom count and whatnot. You can do a year to date, 12 months back. You could manipulate the data however you want. If we wanted to do just this year compared to last, go back 12 months, and let's just pick Morris County, and we'll do Boonton Township and Madison. I just run the report, and it gives me, here is Boonton. So the listings in Boonton were 23, 16, 18, 26, 32, down to 25. The sale price to ask price was in January of 20, it was 79%. Sale to original ask, that's horrible. Sale to last list price at 91. And that number's trended all the way up to 98 for last year and 102 for this year. And you can see like the active listings is down, new listings is down, under contract is stable, and closings not that many in Boonton, so the numbers get to be skewed a little bit more. Madison, listings look like they've been a low of in the 40s, and they're at 45 now, less than half of what they've normally been. Interestingly enough, the average list price is up 72,000. Average sale price is only up 23,000. It's interesting. That could also be a mix of the different houses that are selling, not necessarily the same house is selling for that amount. And in 2020, there were only 10 sales, which would skew the data tremendously. So does everybody see how you can look at this data and how this, something that if you're focusing on a particular market, I really think we should be paying close attention to. And then you also have the canned reports, NJ Municipal Stats. We could take a look at 2021, May. And let's go to the Randolph. So new listings, closed sales, gives you all of this data. And as you can see, the closed sales are off tremendously because in February, March and April, we were kind of shut down, so there wasn't that much closing. It's not really a good comparison. But here are some cool reports that you can provide when you're educating your sellers.
Or door knocking. It's a great piece to hand out.
Yep, it's a good conversation piece. So,
hey Rob, I have a question. So we're markets that chronically overprice, right? Where almost all the houses are, just overpriced by nature. Like Montclair is underpriced, right? Florham Park is generally almost always overpriced. How do you compete on the selling side as this market turn happens? You're going to be so dramatically low if you price it correctly, right? Because you have the market shifting, they're already overpriced, and now you're going to come in and give them what you believe the real price is. How do you sell that?
I think it's a communication skill as much as it is a knowledge skill, Glenn, in that case, because the quality of the communication we have builds trust, and I think that's where we need to be careful about not buying listings. And when you buy those listings in an increasing market, sometimes the market will bail you out, right, Glenn? But if the market's not raging, you need to be able to be different than everybody else, right? Like if you're doing the same thing as everybody else in the market, you're really not going to set yourself apart. And I would role play and I would practice exactly how that conversation goes, and I would anticipate how they're going to object to that and figure out how you're going to respond to those objections. And it's an excellent point that you can't sell in, you said East Hanover? Is that what you said?
That's Florham Park.
Florham
Park.
You can't sell in Florham Park the same way you sell in Montclair, right? Because I think Montclair, the consumer or the seller is accustomed to that underpricing and that that market strategy, that auction market strategy, because that's what your competition is going out there with. And to be honest with you, the competition is going out there and they're saying, hey, you want to list with me because I sell my houses at 111% of the ask price.
Yeah.
And then in the same conversation, they tell you to underprice yours so you get more demand. So, if you put the pieces together and you're very logical, you would flesh that out. But I think most people are emotional and go based upon, how you can communicate the message as much as the data, if that makes sense.
It does. And just to follow on to that, I'm sorry. I hear on a lot of these podcasts that the stats are there's 2 million realtors, 1.9 listings, and only half of them have sold a house this year, right? Is there somewhere to get that data? Is it like CoreLogic, or where do we find out the real stats rather than the hype that a lot of the mentors are trying to sell?
I think there might be some of that data on your NAR logon. I could take a look for you. But I would go there. But you could also back into it, Glenn, and the piece where the NAR kind of falls short is, I think, if you look at the number of licensees or realtors. Were they saying realtors or licenses?
They never specify because they'll craft it to whatever their message is, right?
Yeah. So I think it depends. Do you include people who are in referral? How do you quantify that? But that's a good question. I can see if I can find that out reasonably easy. And there is a lot of good data on the NAR site as well. I might be logged in here. Didn't log me out. So you can come here and get some statistical data. It probably has something there about membership on here. And I want to say on those podcasts, those sound bites, Glenn, are they saying like half, or are they saying like 60% of the people have never been in a down market?
Oh yeah, they're saying 60% have never been in a down market.
So there's some other really good sound bites, and I think unfortunately, Glenn, you're in that 60%, but you're definitely an exception to the rule. But yeah, you have to learn how to shift, and maybe you just have to take the active inventory, which NAR publishes, and compare it to I'm sure that there's either on NAR, maybe they have the percentage of people that are licensed statewide that are members of NAR. It's probably traditionally 80%, and then you can extrapolate that way.
So,
Perfect. Thank you.
If I could just ask Glenn a question, it has to do with, our perception that there were more and more houses coming on the market. I mean, I've noticed on Glenn, on your social media, that it seems to me like you're going on a tremendous amount of listing appointments. Is that more than, you're accustomed to, or just about what you do because of the way you do it?
Glenn,
are you still on?
Yeah. My tap to speak wasn't working. Apologize. So it's our strongest month in history for me. I just want to stress that none of these were calling up and saying, I want to sell my house today. These were all nurtures. One of them has been along as 24 months. But, I see demand for selling like no other. Many have come to me based on videos I put online saying, if you're going to do it, you better do it now. And here's the reasons why. And that stimulated a whole bunch of activity with folks that were putting it off.
Okay.
So let me take a quick look at the questions here. Difficulty.
And Robert, just one clarification. I also, a lot of those listing appointments are with my team members. I go out with them. So not all source myself.
Okay.
So somebody asked, like, how do you address a buyer who said, hey, did I overpay? And I'd just be curious to see what some of you share with your clients, and then I'll kind of chime in with my feedback. Not everybody at once.
Rob, I use a calculation. I use a much more conservative number than the percent or higher on what the market's trending towards. But I basically say to them, look, if you bought the house right now, let's say 6 months from now, you'll have 3.5% more. Did you feel like you overpaid if you're at net even and you got the house that you love and you want to live in?
That's an excellent conversation. Anybody else have any? So if they say overpaid relative to what, is it the appraisal?
No, I'm getting overpaid, like one that we're closing next next month. So, you know, I mean, that's the guy who's in the upper price bracket where he wants to be. I mean, his house over appraised as well. So, I mean, that's a bit of comfort to him as well. But I think he's just now seen that there's more things coming on the market, and maybe he had a wider choice. He would have a wider choice now. But, you know, that's just how the market is. I mean, he's ended up in the area that he particularly wanted. There aren't any other houses listed currently in that development where he wants to be. So no, I've said no. It's appraised for more than you paid for it. There's no other houses there, and you needed to move by this date. I mean, it's the market's driven by you know, by supply and demand, and when people need to get shifted. You can't wait forever.
Is anybody seeing either your buyers trying to back out from inspection items, or are you seeing any of your listing transactions fall apart? Because I've been working with some of the newer agents, and they're getting a lot of callbacks on offers that they lost, or even they were told, hey, you know, we have an offer 20,000 higher. Can your person come up? Whether they were puffing or whether they were telling the truth, coming back and saying, hey, is your buyer still interested? Are you getting, are you seeing that overall? Anybody?
The only thing that I'm seeing is I'm seeing that the buyers that we're now going in contract with, coming back and asking questions, like I said, about assessment, and they're actually asking for more things during a turn of review than there were before. I mean, there's still a bit of pushback from sellers, but they are agreeing to more than they were, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. That's what I'm seeing. And I think what with buyers, transactions that were, you know, just smooth sailing, and you'd, you know, put an offer in, getting accepted, there wouldn't be any pushback during a turn review. They'd just, you know, sign up to whatever to get the house. Now we're going to have to work a bit more to get things closed, I think.
And Robert, are you seeing people in your office doing waiving inspection contingencies, or saying, hey, we're doing them for information purposes only? And I have a follow-up to that, if you can chime in on that.
I only in a very limited way. It's not something that is the rule. I think it's more still an exception, because, you know, we've told them to be very cautious. I mean, you know, this is to waive inspection, is really opens them up to possible, you know, huge expenditures that they hadn't anticipated, without any recourse.
And how are you seeing it, or if you're waiving inspections, how are you writing that into the contract, the offer? Anybody want to volunteer? Like, what are you putting in the, Janine, you have a?
I know that I myself and some other agents are writing in, you know, the basic. I mean, we always have structural, radon, and termite, but in addition to that, up to a certain amount. So they'll waive up to 5,000 or 10,000 in inspection issues, you know, depending on the price of the house. It maybe can be a percentage, but I had someone say, you know, if it's more than 5,000, then, you know, we want it addressed. If it's less than 5,000, we can waive it, that kind of thing. Because people really want to get into their new house, and a lot of people are also selling as well. So they have now more money in their pocket this year than they would have had last year. So it's relative to them, because maybe they have another 50 or 75,000 than they would have before, so they don't really mind putting that right into the next house. So that's what I see happening with some of the agents here in my office as well.
Trudy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I see that if people are downsizing, not so much if people are upscaling. You know, the playoff is different. But what I'm doing is, or what I was doing, I'm not doing it anymore, like the ones that I'm now putting offers in on, because they were going multiple. If there was a mortgage involved and we were going way over the list, my people were always waiving mortgage appraisal if they could on any figure over the list amount, to get the offer, you know, forwarded to the you know, and in front of the seller. With appraisals, if they're wanting anything to do with you know, the appraisal, and the listing agents were saying, you're going to have to waive this, you're going to have to waive that, we've got so many, I'd always do safety, structural, environmental, and I'd always put major in there as well, because major covers a multitude of sins. So you could argue that major is going to be a furnace or a you know, an AC or something like that. So I was getting stuff through and into inspections with putting the major in there as well. And then, you know, we've been successful coming back on, you know, some furnace issues. They may not have addressed them, but I've always eked to get a warranty or something like that if necessary. But major is a good one to put in there, because that covers all sorts of stuff.
So I would just tell everybody to be very cautious about waiving items, especially if you're someplace where you have well and septic, where they're prone to having issues.
Oh yeah, they're covered as well. So well, septic, and radon is not figured into to those items. You know, that's, it was the other bits.
So before we wrap up, I see Jim Pastorini, if you want to just wave, we have a We Insure partnership and a We Insure franchise for one-stop shopping. And if you ever reach out to Jim, he's just trying to help make the process a little bit easier and smoother for us. So thanks for sharing some time here with us, Jim. And
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, and actually, you know, Jim, you have access to how many different companies?
A lot of companies, Rob. A lot of different companies.
So one of the benefits of using a franchise is you get to get multiple quotes from only having to go to one person, as opposed to shopping with 10 different places. So there's a little plug for you, Jim, to help make the process a little bit simpler. And I just want to wish everybody a happy and a safe 4th of July holiday weekend, and enjoy your time off. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Bye, Rob.
Bye, everybody. Thanks,
Bye, Rob.
Trudy.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.